All right, here we go. We're looking at the potential for a major hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico this week. I hate to say it, but it's happening. And you see the GFS. Now listen, the models were sniffing this out last week. Now we're starting to see that agreement. And boy, we could see a doozy of a storm in the Gulf of Mexico as the conditions really start to line up. Right now, center of circulation somewhere right in here. You don't have much thunderstorm activity here on the west side, but that likely will change, and we're expecting some rapid intensification as this storm moves into the Gulf of Mexico. Currently, it's moving to the northwest at about 6 knots or so, and it's expected to turn more northwestward between the Yucatan Peninsula, as we said here, and Cuba sometime on Tuesday, and then move into the Gulf of Mexico as we head into Wednesday. Now, the waters here are really warm, and it's going to be an area where we could potentially see some explosive growth with this system. So if you're anywhere along the Florida Gulf Coast, even if you're not near the center of the circulation, this thing is going to be huge, I think, by the time it gets into the Gulf. So a big area of influence. And once it moves ashore, it's going to move inland, and it could pick up speed. I talked about Georgia and Alabama last week in the Deep South and the potential for something that does form here moving north, and it looks like it's going to do that. This could be a big problem for the South. This could be a problem for the Tennessee Valley, maybe even up into the Mid-South, and boy, do we bring this depression all the way back. I mean, look at this motion, bringing it back to the west a little bit because of the upper low. We're going to look at that today. We're going to get into some detail, but the bottom line is, guys, we are looking at the threat of a major hurricane with life-threatening storm surge, damaging winds, and it could be a wide swath of it. I'm not saying this to scare you. These are the facts. This is what we're looking at right now, and this is potentially on the table. Again, all of these areas have the risk of seeing excessive rainfall, especially these yellow areas and the red areas. I expect these to really push out even further as we get closer, as the National Hurricane Center really narrows down that forecast. Here's some of your model data here, the spaghetti plots, if you will, center of circulation down here. A lot of agreement that this thing's going somewhere here. I will tell you this. Have you ever ran off the road, you're driving down the interstate and you hit the rumble strips and it kind of pulls you to the side? Well, imagine Florida here. I think you got to watch this too. As the storm moves this way, right? Center of circulation doing this. Does it interact with the coast? Sometimes that happens and it wants to pull it just a little bit to the east, maybe a little bit further than what the models say. So don't get too hung up in the exact track of this. Again, this thing could be hundreds of miles wide with a large influence, a big storm on the way. And here's why I think we see such a wild shift to where this thing goes once it gets close to the shore. As we head into Tuesday, here's the storm down here into the Gulf. We are going to have some severe weather on Tuesday, by the way. We're going to talk about that ahead of this trough, potentially for parts of Kentucky, maybe even into the Appalachians. This is a pretty robust area of cold air aloft. A big ridge starting to build, though, across the west, and what goes up must come down. Now you've got your flow like this. Bit of a high offshore here starting to develop in the upper levels. If anything, that might actually drive that thing north. Now you've got your upper low here, and do we see a bit of a wraparound effect from this? Does this basically pull this in and just suck it up and pull it back to the west? Well, some of the models have this, and this is the European from this afternoon wanting to take this and boom, sort of pull it into this upper low and yank it back to the west. That would mean it moves faster maybe than what's a typical storm may do. Really, is there a typical storm though? But either way, it looks like it could be a fast mover once it moves inland, and that may mean the faster it moves, the stronger the winds are. At least that's the theory, that it would lose strength slower because it's going to be here by day 2 versus still meandering down here on the coast. That's one aspect to look at. Again, tomorrow with that upper low here, out ahead of that, I showed you the areas of severe weather possible from the Ohio Valley into the Tennessee Valley, pushing all the way into the Appalachians. So watch out for some strong damaging winds, especially as we head into the afternoon. Day 2 hail outlook, there could be some hail embedded in those, and maybe a few tornadoes on the northern side of that up into parts of Indiana, Ohio, over into northern parts of West Virginia and Pennsylvania. Let's stretch things out a little wider here and take a look at what's going on. This is this afternoon's run of the GFS. There's your upper low. Look at it just pinwheeling here. You can see it here across parts of Oklahoma now, just bringing in Helene. And then look what happens here. This particular model run doesn't want to bring it back to the west. This is the GFS. It sort of wants to let it meander and go to the north. I still think that the National Hurricane Center is onto something with that upper low wanting to pull that thing a little bit further to the west. It's one of the reasons that you see their storm track like this, bringing it across the Gulf of Mexico, developing it into a major hurricane before landfall, and then rapidly, I mean, look, we go from Thursday to Friday to Saturday. That's pretty quick, right? So we're moving hundreds of miles a day and then yanking it back to the west. So either way, I think we get some decent rains here. It could be flooding rains. And we could have a problem on our hands for the next several days as Helene meanders, or at least the moisture sticks around through Sunday. Across the west, though, that ridge starts to break down some snow up here into the Canadian Rockies. There's your upper low here. Likely our remnants of Helene just kind of here. No tropical threat at this point, but flooding rain's definitely on the table. And then our ridge kind of pushes off to the east. That snow and cold tries to push down into parts of Montana, maybe even Wyoming. So maybe some snow here into the mountains. And then as we move into the first day of October, this would be next Tuesday, so 1 week out from now. Now, again, it's 1 week from now, but that right there, guys, that's a pretty cold pocket of air dropping in with our next trough that starts to dig in. And look at the snow trying to pick up here, at least on the models across parts of South Dakota and North Dakota, at least on the west side of that. Does that happen? We're pretty far out on that, so I wouldn't bet on it. Either way, something to watch out. Let's time these storms out. This is going to be a big deal as we head into Tuesday. Some of the storms have really dumped some heavy rain through Monday, and I think that's going to be the case again on Tuesday. However, as we head through Tuesday, some of these could pulse up and get strong and be a little severe too. So that's something to keep an eye on as we head into the afternoon. Further north into Michigan, showers up in here. The strongest storms will likely be, let me back it up just a little bit, right here. Watch out across Ohio, Indiana, heading into Tuesday afternoon and Tuesday evening. A little bit of a sheared look here in the atmosphere. So you got those change of wind direction with height. With your upper low kind of doing like this, it may actually shear some of these storms off, and that could cause them to rotate. And then as we head into Wednesday, that kind of dies down. A lot of it pushes off to the east, but look at the tropical moisture already starting to increase now across the south. So we could start to see some rain as early, at least that tropical rain, starting to push in sometime by Wednesday night into Thursday. And it's hard to believe that by the time we get to this point, we could be looking at the first outer bands impacting parts of Florida on Thursday as that storm gets really close and unfortunately would likely be intensifying. All right, across the west, though, we've got that ridge developing here. We talked about that. There's our next system that's going to bring rain to the Pacific Northwest, maybe some really high mountain snow here heading into Wednesday, and then that pushes east, and we talked about that snow up here into the Canadian Rockies that would drop south into the higher elevations as we head into the end of the week. Severe weather as we head into Wednesday starts to drop, but I will tell you as we head into Thursday with a landfalling hurricane, I think anywhere, especially here on the eastern side of this storm, watch out for tornadoes, all right? That's a terrible tornado. Maybe that's a little better. I don't know. Yes, but watch out here in the southeast. Any landfalling hurricane is going to have wind shear. It's going to be a big deal. It's very active right now, guys, and it's not just active now. I think we're going to have a really active winter, too. I've made a winter forecast, or at least an update. That just came out a few days ago. If you've not seen it, it's right here. Check it out. I'll see you there.